Hello everyone. Today we have Dr. Neeraj Shankar. He is an expert in disaster management, and more specifically, we will be talking today loss and damages. Loss and damages is one of the new topic that we are coming through worldwide. In the last COP conference, it was a major issue, and it was settled down. And again, it is again coming up, and we will hear more about on this particular topic, and I invite Dr. Neeraj Shankar to look into this and give us more specific context as well. Thank you so much. Over to you, Neeraj.
Thanks, Rizwan. I'm Neeraj. I'm a disaster management consultant at Tonkin Taylor. I've been working on this loss and damage field recently, but I've been working in developing national strategic plans for weather, water, climate services, have been engaged in several disaster risk reduction projects, and now I'm just focusing on the loss and damage projects. And this is the project that the whole concept and the project that I'm going to talk about is the third pillar for the climate action. I'll quickly share my screen, and then can you see the screen, please?
Yes, I can see your screen. Thank you.
Okay. So, loss and damage. What is actually loss and damage? There is actually no agreed definition of what loss and damage is, as loss and damage can be interpreted in different ways. But according to UNFCCC, it refers to the impacts of climate change, including slow onset events and extreme weather events, which may result in loss and damage. Loss means things that are lost permanently, and damages things that have been affected by climate change even, which can be restored. Okay, so this is a high-level definition of loss and damage. So what is the difference between mitigation, adaptation, and loss and damage? As you know, like these are the three pillars of climate action. One is mitigation, which involves reduction of greenhouse gases through activities such as like swapping our fossil fuel based power generation, which is like using our coal or diesel power generation to solar based or wind based. Adaptation, which includes preparing the community and infrastructure to face the climate impacts, such as like building seawalls, making the roads resilient to flooding or to heavy rainfall. So some of those activities are called as fall into adaptation. And the last action last pillar of climate action, which is loss and damage, it sees as actions taken to address the impacts caused by the climate crisis that could not or were not avoided through mitigation or reduced through adaptation. So this is the difference. Like mitigation is you're reducing the greenhouse gas emissions. Adaptation is you're preparing the community to face the extreme weather event or even a slow onset event. Loss and damage is which is actions that's been taken to address the impacts. Okay, like which cannot be avoided or reduced through adaptation. What are the types of loss and damages? So there are mainly two types, which is economic losses and non-economic losses. Economic losses is like if you face a disaster, you could lose your wages, your salary. You could lose crops. You could if you are a tourism-based country, then you could lose reduction in tourism, and then loss of economic revenue from coastal activity due to inundation. Those are some of the economic losses, right? The non-economic losses imagine like if you're facing a cyclone event, what could happen? Some of the where you can't put a monetary value, which is loss of life, right? Loss of health, loss of homeland, which can be caused due to sea level rise, and reduction in biodiversity, and loss of cultural heritage. So, for instance, like if one of the community has to be moved because of like constant flooding or because of sea level rise, they have to be moved from one location which they have lived for like generations together. They have been moved to another location, which means there could be loss of societal identity itself and even cultural heritage, and that could be the displacement or migration, right? So, how does the whole loss and damage concept have been evolved? Like, this all started in 1990s, early 1990s. So, the initial awareness of in 1970 to 1990s, initial awareness of irreversible climate change impacts began emerging through this era. But during that period, the primary focus was mitigation. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, now referred to as IPCC, established in 1988, started publishing reports that highlight severe unavoidable impacts of climate change, even if emissions were reduced, right? In 1991, Vanuatu, on behalf of IOSIS, Alliance of Small Island States, submitted a proposal to UNFCCC for a mechanism to address loss and damage. And Vanuatu is a small island developing state in the Pacific Island in the Pacific region, and it began to call for actions, and that's when the term loss and damage has been first evolved. But then there was a dead silence until 2007. That's when, in 2007, the COP13, the term loss and damage was first seen in the UNFCCC decision. But back in 1991, it was submitted to UNFCCC as a proposal. But in 2007, that's when first the UNFCCC has used the term loss and damage in their decision text. Nothing happened for 3 years, and in 2010 at COP16, I think it's at Cancun adaptation framework acknowledged loss and damage as a distinct issue, requesting further research on its scope and initiating a work program. This work program underscored the need to understand non-economic losses mainly, such as cultural and social impact, along with the economic losses. In 2013, again after 3 years, this is the first time a institutional body, which is called as like Warsaw Institutional Mechanism for Loss and Damage, was established and officially recognized L&D, loss and damage, as a critical component of climate action. The WIM, Warsaw International Mechanism mandate includes improving understanding, coordination, and support for loss and damage, but without explicit financial commitments, right? And then it moved into COP21, which is a historic, a major milestone where the Paris Agreement was published, and Paris Agreement included loss and damage under Article 8, granting its formal international recognition. However, the agreement specifically excluded liabilities. If you see paragraph 48, this was have been added at very crucial hours, or you could say at the end of the COP. They just sneakily added this paragraph 48 to 52. The agreement specifically excludes the liability or compensation provisions, an area of contention, especially for developed countries concerned about potential legal and financial responsibilities. Like they somehow said that like developed countries are not responsible in these paragraphs. Again, after 3 or 4 years, nothing happened. In 2019, Santiago Network for Loss and Damage has been established, where that this has been established mainly to provide the technical assistance for the countries. And again, like from 2019, 2021, we was again establishing this Santiago Network, and then in 2022, COP27, a historic agreement was reached to establish a loss and damage fund to assist vulnerable nations impacted by climate-induced disasters. The fund is seen as a major step towards addressing loss and damage, with work ongoing to establish its operational details, funding mechanism, and the exact definition of eligible loss and damages. In 2023, this is when the fund that's been decided has now been operationalized, and $700 million USD has been pledged into this fund. But in COP29, what may happen is that this fund, which was established in 2023, is now called as FRLD, Fund for Responding to Loss and Damages. So this in 2024, this COP, they would be talking more about like what sort of roles and responsibilities does this fund would create, would need, and how other countries could access this fund, and like what sort of responsibilities this fund will bear. Like this all will be discussed in the COP29, and there will be a third review of the Warsaw International WIM, and there'll be a huge request from the countries to scale up the technical assistance. Okay, but there are some key issues in loss and damages. So first thing is financing. The biggest question remains, who will contribute to the loss and damage fund, and how much each country will contribute? Developing countries, which contribute the least to climate change, argue that developed nations should provide the majority of the funding, right? So again, this is the biggest question remains, like who pays and how much. And next one, scope and definition. What qualifies for loss and damage? Defining what constitute loss and damage has been challenging. Should it cover only climate-driven events, or should it include slow onset events like sea level rise or drought? So this is still an issue. Governance. Who decides on fund allocation and eligibility? The design of the fund's governance structure is critical, as it needs to ensure fair representation and transparency. And the other issue is like legal responsibilities. Many developed countries fear that the formal L&D funding could set a precedent for climate reparations or legal liability. So this has led to cautious language in agreements emphasizing assistance over liability, which you have seen in Article 8 paragraph, in Paris Agreement paragraph 52. But what are the key issues to address loss and damage to address loss and damages? So first thing, vulnerable communities, particularly in the Pacific Island nations, African nations, and small island states, are facing irreversible damage to their ecosystems, livelihood, and cultures. So the current adaptation efforts are inadequate to address the scale of the losses. And second one is there is a significant gap to address loss and damage. Existing mechanisms like the WIM are like heavily underfunded, and the climate financing right now, which is FRLD, often fall short in responding to the urgent needs of affected community, because the access to climate finance is so difficult. Like the funding proposals are so tough to write, and often the countries lack the capacity or the technical capability to write these proposals to access the climate finance. And next one is like, while some technical support mechanism exists, like the Santiago Network or was some informal working groups exist, many vulnerable communities lack the capacity to implement appropriate strategies. So there is an urgent need for tailored technical expertise, training, and knowledge sharing to ensure sustainable recovery and resilience. And the other one is national policies on climate change and disaster management often overlook loss and damage, focusing predominantly on just mitigation and adaptation. So institutional frameworks needs to be reformed for addressing loss and damage, and also like there's insufficient coordination between stakeholders. And the other issues are inequitable access to resources and the fragmented understanding of the non-economic losses. Like some can put a figure on non-economic losses, but like not many non-economic losses can't be can be converted into a monetary value, right? So moving on to the importance of loss and damage project, like why these projects are important, and I've been fortunate enough to be involved in one of the like I should say it's one of the kind in the world, and like it's sort of one of the first in the world as well, like to design the loss and damage projects. So I was fortunate enough to design like 4 projects for like the Pacific Island countries. So what are the importance? Why is it important for this loss and damage project? Is that while adaptation efforts can reduce the risks and vulnerabilities associated with the climate change, there will always be losses that adaptation alone cannot be prevented. These include loss of livelihood, as I explained before, biodiversity, cultural heritage, which have profound social and psychological consequences. So loss and damage projects are designed to address these irreversible impacts, providing financial, technical, and psychological support for affected communities. And these projects, the most vulnerable countries are often the least equipped to cope with the climate change. For example, Vanuatu, Marshall Islands, Tuvalu, and Mauritius, Maldives, like and many other island countries, along with the low-lying coastal regions and other marginalized populations, face heightened risk due to their geographical locations, socioeconomic conditions, and limited adaptive capacities. Right. So L&D projects target these vulnerable communities to enhance their capacity to recover, rebuild, and adapt to ongoing climate risks. And the other one, which I'm going to explain in detail, is this one, like complementing global climate frameworks. The Paris Agreement recognizes loss and damage as a critical component of climate action. The WIM, Warsaw International Mechanism for Loss and Damage, was established to provide. So by supporting the implementation of WIM and the related frameworks, L&D projects can help governments and organizations meet their climate commitments while ensuring that vulnerable populations are not left behind. And the other, like other some high level bullet points on the importance of loss and damage projects are preserving the cultural heritage and identity, ensuring intergenerational equity, and loss and damage, because often loss and damage can be quite different to different communities. So it can be different. Loss and damage for me is different to loss and damage for Rizwan Bhai. Loss and damage for me would be different to loss and damage of for my community. So so some of these projects would address, will be tailored to those communities or those individuals. So so that's why like these projects are really important, so that like no one's left behind. And it has the potential to reduce the long-term socio-economic disruption as well. So that's why like these projects are highly important. And some of the, based on my experience and based on the reading that I've done, some of the key components of the successful loss and damage projects are: to provide technical assistance. So most of this project should include technical support for building resilience and reducing the risks of future loss. So this can involve, for example, infrastructure improvement, capacity building workshops. For example, like if ministerial organizations may not know what loss and damage is about, so conducting workshops to them and providing knowledge sharing initiatives that empower local communities to manage their climate risks could be is one of the key component of a successful loss and damage project. And well, these projects should include an element of psychological, social, and well-being support as well. And what I've found is that like the impacts of climate change are not only physical, right, but also social and cultural. So L&D projects must recognize the importance of cultural preservation. This includes supporting the preservation of traditional knowledge and ensuring that the cultural identity of a community is maintained. And very important is the monitoring and evaluation and learning. And in some other contexts, it could be called as M&D, and sometimes it's called as monitoring and evaluation research and learning, research, reporting and learning. So there's many ways that you could say this, but like it is very important to monitor, evaluate, and learn, because it's an evolving concept. So we don't know how a project will look like. So and how what community needs, and community needs can change over time, and because let's say like if one house in a community may not be experiencing loss and damage right now, but with the sea level rise, with the acceleration in global warming, could increase the sea level rise, which means the loss and damage could happen to the person's house in next year. So if you're monitoring and evaluating continuously, like we would find out, okay, we can find out the evolving needs of the communities, and therefore we could improve the way that the projects are designed. And most importantly, having learning events conducted at regular intervals throughout the project duration is very, very important, because everyone needs to learn. And as I said, this is an evolving concept. So everything is a learning for us, and it can inform a better design for the next project. And most importantly, these projects should become country or community-led approaches. Okay, successful loss and damage projects are those that prioritize the needs, knowledge, and leadership of individual countries or local communities, because the funding organizations have a set mindset, and like they would be looking vulnerabilities in a different way, but they may not be experiencing the vulnerabilities or impacts that are facing by the countries or the individual communities. So these L&D project needs to be designed around them, or it should be a partner-led approach. It should be a country or partner-led approach. And the final one is the financial support. One core aspect of loss and damage project is providing financial resources to communities impacted by climate change. This can involve providing insurance mechanisms, climate risk financing, and access to climate funds. So funding should be flexible and accessible, ensuring that the communities can access resources quickly to respond to disasters and being recovery efforts. And the other key components include like multi-stakeholder collaborations and providing support to regional organization, and then having a long-term sustainability and exit strategy as well. So this is these are some of the key components of loss and damage projects, and this at a conclusion is that like loss and damage is now recognized as a vital part of the global climate action. As I mentioned, it's a third pillar of action, climate action, and these projects are essential for climate justice and equity, ensuring vulnerable nations receive needed support. The key to effective loss and damage project lies in long-term funding, community engagement, adaptive learning, and policy integration. So my final thoughts are that like for L&D initiatives to succeed, the global communities must continue to prioritize funding and collaboration, so that those least responsible for climate change are not left to bear its greatest burden. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Neeraj, for providing us on this evolving topic insight, not only from your own project, but from where all that the journey that we did started overall in 2005 and earlier, and all the way coming to where we are at the moment, and also giving us some more in-depth analysis that what could be done in the future and what are those challenges. So I have one question before we say thank you to at the end, but I have one question regarding the technical support that developing countries like Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Afghanistan, which are facing those climate change effects. Like you mentioned that despite how much we scale up our adaptation to the climate change, but there will always be some loss and damages. So what we can do as a developing nation in terms of to upscale our technical knowledge to get those funding available in the world and with the donors?
Very good question and very interesting one. This has been an issue, especially in the Pacific Island countries where I have worked majorly, and this could be translated to the developing countries like Pakistan, Cambodia, Philippines, like you name it. Like the main thing is that the donor organizations should initially provide the technical support to these countries, like so one of the activity that I've designed in one of the projects, which can't take the name of the country, but like in that project, is that the country wanted to retain the loss and damage knowledge, right? So how we have designed is that, but the country lacks that knowledge, like the expertise, even to capture that knowledge, right? Like they lack that knowledge. So what we have designed is that, like, we paid up, we recruited a local staff, and then we paired up with a technical advisor, an international advisor, and an expert, and we started training the local expert, and the local expert then trained four other like their juniors under the supervision of the technical advisor from the international organization. And then now this country holds the key technical input on loss and damage. So now this a team of 5 can access funding that's been operationalized by in the last COP, which is Fund for Responding to Loss and Damage. They can once the projects starts to evolve, this team of 5 would capture the evidence that's needed for loss and damage funding, and then they can start writing proposals. So this is how, like, you retain the capacity, and this is how you capture the capacity in country. So all you need is external support initially, but you need to have a long-term strategy and plan. So that's I
think very interesting, answer. I think most of the time, especially in the response phase, lots of technical support that is coming from the international community, they go away very quickly. Like all those UN NGOs and other people, they with excellent knowledge, they come, they do their job. Obviously, the response period and will be very limited, and they develop some of the programs, but they go away very quickly. Even within that Pakistan, if you talk about the context of Pakistan, like 2010 and 2022, lots of help came. For example, in the earlier phase, rehabilitation, response, and other phases. So people move around, and then once those projects are somehow matured, they move to some other projects. So that knowledge retention, I really like that you mentioned that how to retain that whatever the knowledge that we have. It's very, very important aspect so that it can be translated in the future disasters and the future recoveries. Yeah. Exactly. And I would like to thank you so much for your time, and it was a wonderful topic, and that we can talk long and long. And finally, thank you so much for your time. And if anyone got any questions, so Neeraj's email is already presented at the end of the presentation, that we can always contact him for any question that is related to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.